So I'm going to talk about Jim Burke's effective instruction for English language arts. And so he kind of starts off the book by talking about how instruction works. So various instruction, like students should know that there is more than one approach to learning a topic/concept. So that could be reading the text, seeing the text, and more. Like there's different ways to learn a topic than just having to sit there and listen to the teacher. Visual explanations, that's something that my guide tutor and I do a lot. We do a lot of visuals for our students. It's a form of our differentiation since a lot of them need to see it in order to understand it. And then apply different entry points of instruction, so do different things pretty much every day, but have a routine so that students aren't confused or lost within the instruction. So you could demonstrate, model for students so they can be successful. Read to think, reading text excerpts aloud to introduce a topic so that could get students thinking. Write to learn, which is journal entries on what they have learned so far throughout the unit, discussions, what do they think, where do they think the reading is going, and so forth. And like reciprocal teaching, so having students teach each other while they're in groups, which is very important because most students learn from each other instead of the teacher because half the time they're not paying attention, which sounds really bad, but it's the truth. He also talks about group work, how your group should provide structure and you should make sure that your expectations are clear. Students should be held accountable for their roles in the group. So basically saying that if you're in a group, if you're grouping your students, making sure you're grouping them to where they can be successful, where they can learn and contribute to the group, and have them reflect on their process in the group, how they felt about the group, because sometimes you can think the group is going okay, but the students can think that it's not going okay, that they aren't actually learning anything from one another, and that they actually need a better group. Don't overuse groups, which I think is something that we probably will struggle with in English language arts just because it's easier to place students in groups when you get stuck on something like analyzing a text and you want them to try to figure it out on their own. Having them in a group to help each other balance themselves out is usually what we try to do, but it's not always a successful tool. It could be seen as a crutch. And then different purposes allow for different groups to be formed. So sometimes it doesn't even have to be a full group. It could just be a think, pair, share where they're just with one partner and they talk about what they have learned. But always like bringing it back to the whole classroom or individual work is the best. So Jim Burke also talks about knowing your learners, which I think is really important because sometimes we place students in groups and we don't realize that the group isn't benefiting them because we don't know what kind of learner they are. There's that person who observes, the person who learns from trial and error, and the person that translates what they learn into action. And then we have like the organized personas where there's the person who overcomes the obstacles that everyone is facing in the group to help them learn better and learn more and solve the problem that they're having. And then the person who brings it all together and leads the group, which I think is really important because we're always going to have that one student who's leading the group more than they should be and contributing more and not, making sure that everyone is contributing. And then he also talks about how we should teach students to gather and evaluate information, read critically, take responsibility for their own learning, be flexible in their thinking and process, reflect on their thinking, and provide explanations, interpretations, or solutions, and mess around with ideas and generate questions. So basically, that's stuff we do in EL anyway, but it helps the discussion go a lot smoother when we have students that question other students' ideas that they see in the text or even questioning the text overall instead of each other. We should assess what students know before we start teaching. So something that I think is really cool and easy are KWL charts. So you know what students know, want to learn, or what they have learned so far. And I think that's a great way to assess certain things, especially if you are talking about a text or an article or anything. It's a great way to know what they know before you start reading it. That way, like, half the time, if you're reading a play, you don't have to read everything. You just pick certain scenes from there that can get students thinking and get them learning. So there's different types of assessments. Diagnostic, done before we start teaching, it helps create a learning profile. So what do our students know before we start teaching? What can we help them learn? And we have formative and summative. So formative is like during the instruction, and summative is after. So that's pretty much like writing assessments that we're going to have at the end of the unit, having students write an essay or a thesis or a paragraph even. Make sure our objectives are clear, because we want students to understand what they are learning or what their goal is to learn. We should give students the rubrics when we're giving them the prompt. So if we're having them write an essay, also give them the prompt so that we are setting them up for success, and we're helping them know what is expected of them before they start writing or while they're writing, so they can check their progress as they go forward. Tools and technology. So using things like the overhead projector to model for students so they can see what you're doing as you're doing it. And even graphic organizers can be modeled for students. Thinking with the students can be seen over overhead projections. Just making it crystal clear that you're also thinking along with the students instead of just having it already filled out for them. It is okay to have a cheat sheet in a sense, but we should be essentially doing these things along with the students. Creating classroom culture, so identifying each student's needs early through questionnaires. And I think so far questionnaires have helped me get to know my students better. I even had them write a letter of introduction to me, anything that they wanted me to know, anything that I could help them with, or just getting to know them a little bit better. And yeah, so maintaining a safe and productive environment, so making sure that every student feels safe to share what they're thinking about the material, and then acknowledging their struggles and finding ways to help them. Most of two of my students in my class are English language learners, so I think just me acknowledging that they're still working on their English has helped them feel more safe around me and more willing to try to write in English than opposed to Spanish. Overall instruction. We should offer multiple opportunities to practice and apply skills. So far we've done a lot of translations of the quotes that they're reading in the book so that they really understand what's going on, and having them kind of tell us what they think is going on as we're doing the translation. So what do you think that they're saying here? Understanding vocabulary, we're putting the vocabulary into their agendas, so their daily journal that they do before we start the instruction, so that they're getting a daily use of this vocabulary, so it's not just like, oh, we learned it one day and that's it. So I think overall instruction for effective instruction is just making sure that you know what skills you want to be taught before you start planning, or even before you start teaching the students, and then always offering multiple opportunities for them to practice and apply their skills, and then even embedding their vocabulary into everything that they're doing so that they have a full grasp of it.